Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I will be providing my review of the 2015 book by George R.R. Martin, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. To call this a book is interesting because it's not a novel necessarily. It is actually three novels combined into one binding of a book. And so I usually have a lot of difficulty reading novellas. They're just naturally not something I'm interested. I recognize value novellas have, but they're just not a type of storytelling that grabs me, that really makes me interested. However, this bind-up really worked for me. I think that what made this book so good was the novella format and was also the focus that it had. So this is the same universe as The Song of Ice and Fire. This is just set 100 years prior. And what worked for this book primarily was the familiarity that it provided. If you know the universe of A Song of Ice and Fire, you know what is what the plans are, you know about the Wall, you know about the Reach, you know about King's Landing, you know the Targaryens, you know the Starks, you know all of the families, and so the history and background is much more digestible than jumping into a new series necessarily. Another thing that makes this book so good is, as I said, the focus. This one focuses on two characters, a knight named Dunk, or Sir Duncan the Tall, and also his squire named Egg. My biggest issue with the Song of Ice and Fire books is that George Martin would just go everywhere with them. You know, in the first book, he kind of knew where he was going, and then in the second book, he starts adding more and more new characters, and you'd think he'd stop, but he keeps doing it. And whereas The Wheel of Time added new characters, it seemed there was a reason that they were added, and it all tied together in the end. So far, it seems that George Martin just likes to add characters just to add characters, and then sometimes kill them off just to kill them off. There's no purpose to it. At least here, you are following two characters, Dunk and Egg, and really, from a point of view perspective, you're really just following Dunk. And it is just fantastically written, and the speed that these stories happen is actually quite good, considering it's a novella. He's able to use fewer words to tell quite a lot of events that are happening in this book. And after reading this, I know everyone wants Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring to come out, as do I, but I almost wonder, would I rather have more novellas like this? I think I would, unfortunately. But that shows how good this book is. So getting into the three novellas, the first novella is called The Hedge Knight, and I think this was the best novella of the bunch. And from what I've seen on Goodreads, I think that most people would agree with me on that. This is the novella that kicks it off. This is the novella that begins the story of Dunk meeting Egg. And there's a lot of revelations about who these characters are. There's some great revelations about the world building. There are some great epic scenes and some very cinematically visual moments. I know that the new TV show House of the Dragon will not be able to show these moments, but I wish it could, because the trial in this book is fantastic. I just loved reading all of that. The Trial of the Seven is what I believe it's called. You also have some great world building of, you get to see inside some castles, you get to see what a tournament is like. In the first novel of the Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, you see a tournament occurring, but you don't get into the nitty-gritty of what the tournament is like for the knights. This book, you get to see what that's like, and it is just a delight. You also get to see, how do knights get paid? How do they survive? How do they, what tasks do they do when they're not fighting a war? You know what happens during the war, but you don't understand the process of being a knight, and he explains it in this book, and it was so great. I was so frustrated reading T.H. White's book, Once and Future King, because I felt that he didn't have focus, he didn't have knights and shining armor and epic stories. His was very depressing and was much more focused on being a literature story as opposed to a fantasy story. This one is much more fantastical, and thus it is more fun to read. I will also, before I move on to the next novella, I will mention that the artwork in here, which is done by Gary Gianni, was fantastic. Just about every couple of pages there's a new sketch, and the sketches in this book were brilliant, and I loved them, and it kept me really engaged as I was reading. Didn't help that it took up space on the page, and I was like, good, I don't have as much to read here. The second story, called The Sworn Sword, was also excellent. I feel that this story was a little bit off its first 20 pages, but it really kicks up at the end. And I thought that this story had some excellent surprises again. This book had some of the highest tension of the three, and it had some interesting female characters that jumped in that I don't want to spoil who they were, but you're expecting this, like, one type of character to show up, and she's totally different than your expectations, and it was great subversion in all the best ways. The third story, called The Mystery Knight, is definitely the weakest in my opinion. While it has an odd identity in that it is set a bit further on, its problem is that George Martin was trying to get the lightning strike that the first book had, The Hedge Knight. And so there's a lot of beats in here that remind me of the beats of The Hedge Knight. And I feel like The Hedge Knight was just better, just more entertaining. And this one felt like a retread. Maybe if they were switched in the book, it wouldn't make sense story-wise, but if you read this one before you read The Hedge Knight, maybe I'd enjoy this one more, but it just felt like it was a redo and at moments. That doesn't mean it was bad. It still had some very enjoyable moments. It still had some great action scenes, and of course, great reveals. George Martin loves his big reveal moments. And so that one I think was the weakest. So I'd give The Hedge Knight a 9 out of 10, very high marks. I'd give The Sworn Sword an 8 out of 10, also excellent. And the third story, The Mystery Knight, a 6 out of 10. Now this averages to about a 7.6, which is what I think is accurate for this book. A very good, well done book. Honestly, I like this more than all of the Song of Ice and Fire books. Maybe the first one, Game of Thrones, is better, but honestly, this one I think is the best. I hope that Martin is able to finish the Song of Ice and Fire series, and so he can go back and do more of these, because I just think this was a brilliant idea, very well executed. And so if you've read this book, which of the novellas was your favorite? Comment down below. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. You'll see more fantasy and epic storytelling videos about books. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.